What's up, guys? Here we are, Jonathan with Jonathan Ayers Photography. Today we are going to do a quick edit for this exterior of this house. It's got a lot of birch trees, so I'm going to show you what I use to do sky swaps and how well it works, in my opinion. So let's get started. So I usually pick the exterior of the house for knowing that I'm replacing the sky. So I don't need a perfect sky. It was a very windy, and actually it was raining at the time of these pictures. But I picked the house or the picture based on what I'm going to be doing as far as the edit goes. So let's see. Pick up some whites. I usually do this until right when something starts to be completely black. So we're going to be changing the sky, like I said. So up here, all this doesn't really matter. So if you had a really dark foreground and you were going to bring up the whites, how it's all blown out up there at the top, that's not really going to affect the photo that much because that's all going away anyways. So add a little bit here, and we're going to bring the shadows up in here some, not that much, just a little bit. And we're actually going to erase that. So I always do verticals, and I always hover over one of these so it gives you the grid lines. It's kind of funny, I've never really thought about it before, but I don't actually know how to make the grid lines show up without this. So it looks pretty straight, and there's going to be some converging lines here, but as far as the verticals go, these look good, and it's not a straight on shot, so there's really nothing to square up. Yep, looks good to me. So next step is going to be editing over in Photoshop. All right, we're in Photoshop and we are going to do the sky swap. Actually, we're not going to do the sky swap first. I just saw that this has a water drop over here, so we're going to do what we can to get rid of this water drop first. So this shouldn't be too bad, but we'll see what we can do here. I'm going to use the clone stamp, and you can make your brush bigger or smaller by using the left and right brackets, which is just above the backslash, which is just above enter on your keyboard. Holding Alt to select where you want to use as a source. So being careful, you saw that I actually hit the top of the windowsill there, so we're actually just going to start over. Be a little more careful about the windowsill and staying up a little higher to try and avoid. So it's right about there is when I start catching the windowsill. I guess not the windowsill, the trim on the window. Go here for the window part. Might have to make this a little bit smaller still. It would help me a lot if you guys all subscribed. Thanks. It's probably not going to be perfect, but I mean, it's going to be good enough that the average person is probably not going to notice. For something around this corner, something that I do a lot is use the lasso tool and then select around the windowsill, selecting the area you want to be able to edit. This way you can use the clone clone brush a little more liberally and not worry about painting over the trim. Probably would have been easier just to do that from the start, and then I wouldn't have had to worry about over here. Control D will unselect everything from your selection. So now that we're done with that part of it, we're going to run. So this is an action created by a guy first name Hunter. I'm not even going to try to say Hunter's last name. You can see it here, but he does have an action that he created and you can purchase. It's called Seamless, and this is the action that I use in Photoshop to fix skies, whether they're just super just washed out like this or just not the most appealing sky at the end of the day. So we're just going to play that. So here you're wanting to add to the selection of what you're going to be replacing. So I don't ever use this quick selection brush. I always use the magic wand tool. I have it set, I do not have it set to contiguous, so it's going to select everything that is in that sampling point in the entire picture. I feel like this works better, so if I did have it on this, then it's only going to select what's touching, and that it just doesn't work as well as I think it could by not doing that. So I never do it that way. I always just select everything that and then let it figure out what's in that point sample and then deselect what I don't want to have selected. So I'm not going to have anything. Make sure I don't have anything on the house roof. All the way over here, it does have part of this, the front of this house over here selected. So then it's going to have obviously lots of the snow selected in the yard. This is just an ugly time of the year for us right now. It's warmed up and the weather is awful and it's raining. It's terrible for December. If it's going to be cold and dark, I'd rather it just was cold and dark and snowed. Anyways, so looks like I've deselected everything I don't want it to select. And this part doesn't have to be perfect because the next step is kind of where you do a little more of the fine tuning as far as selecting goes. So we'll do that now. So hit play again to continue in using the action. And so now we're going to use the refine edge tool. This is very interesting how well this actually works. So a lot of the times it does pick up the edges of like where you've selected next to the house roof typically is where I see this. The trim especially. So I'm just going to take a minute and unselect everything that I don't want to have selected. The more, I mean, you can decide, you can play around with this and do this however you'd like. However, the more time you do spend on this, and you'll find that happy medium of where you feel it's good enough for your photos. But the more time you spend on this, the better results you're going to get. So sometimes less is definitely not more in this case. So that is completely up to you, but I will be right back after I finish erasing everything I didn't want to have selected to begin with. Really fast, if you have ideas for future videos, just shoot me a comment down below and I will do my best to get to them. Okay, so we'll see how this does as far as whether it uses too much, because sometimes, especially with birch trees, depending on where you live, the color of trees that you have, these being primarily that whitish yellow color, sometimes it does bleed over into the trees quite a bit, and if it's too noticeable, then I will take the time to do a little better job as far as selecting the trees and the tree branches. It usually does a pretty good job, but sometimes it's just, I don't know, it just has a mind of its own and can't think for some reason. But this should be pretty good So we'll see how this looks. So the next step, it's just going to erase, it's going to refine the edge that you've selected. And then, so now you just kind of, I don't know if you could see that, but this did flicker. And so now that's been deleted. So now we're going to select a sky to put into the photo. So this is my library of skies that I've gotten from people that have allowed other people to have skies. They have made their own libraries, and I've picked those up and taken a bunch of my own, and etc. So we're gonna pick. So I usually don't do a straight up blue sky. Usually, I personally, it's just a personal preference, but I usually like to have something in the sky. I don't usually like just a straight up blue sky. Sometimes I do it, but usually I have some sort of clouds as far as something. I usually just have something in the sky. I don't usually like just straight blue skies, but that's just me. It's personal preference. You can pick whatever you'd like. I don't know which one I want to pick today. We're going to pick, we're going to do, and then you also have to think about where these clouds are going to be in your picture. And so clouds kind of hide imperfections as well. So over here, it's not really important, and this is probably going to be a very difficult area for it to have done a good job as far as refining the edges of all these little tiny branches. So if you pick a sky that has clouds over on that side, you're more likely to be able to hide its inability to do a good job in that section. So we're going to pick this one because it has clouds on that side, it has clouds on this side, and there's really not much going on here. So I hold Alt so it pulls from all four corners until it's wide, just wider than the picture itself. And so it's gonna, I usually try to, you can see down here where the bottom, the horizon of this picture is, I kind of line that up with where I would imagine the horizon would be in this picture. So it's going to be down here somewhere. So that should be pretty good. We will see how it does this. It's not going to look perfect right at this moment, but it usually cleans up pretty good after this. And so it's done. You can see that it did do a pretty good job. It didn't eat too much of the trees in any place that it's noticeable. That looks funny, but that's actually just a piece of bark that's coming off of the tree. So that looks pretty good to me. It just looks like it rained recently. It does not appear as though it's out of place. I guess that's something that I've tried to avoid. It didn't do a super great job right here. But again, it's the story of our lives when it comes to doing sky swaps. The majority of this is pretty clean though. So that's that. We'll just close it, and saving it for me, this brings me straight back into Lightroom. All right, so here we are back in Lightroom. You can see it has the original photo here, the now photo with the sky swap. It's a little blue for me. So we're going to bring that down just a little bit. The thing I've noticed with sky swaps is that they can be a little overpowering. You don't want it to be so bright and blue that it's like, well, that's not real. And bringing down how vivid the sky is also eliminates a lot of the imperfections where it's obviously too blue, and that kind of blends in with the imperfections around the branches. So it has its uh, unintentional pluses. And I also try to bring up the white balance of the photo as well to for in the yellows, so it doesn't look like it would have on a normal rainy, very windy. I mean, you can see there's a tree branch here on the sidewalk, so it was very windy that day. uh I mean, there was that water drop over here on the picture on the roof that it's inevitable if you've never shot in a windstorm while it's raining. Well, good for you. That's not where we live. Kenai, Alaska is always, almost always windy. Consider yourself fortunate. So anyways, so that's that. It appears as though it did a pretty good job. This is good enough for me and my clients. I don't know how much more nitpicky you could try and get, but at some point you're moving past the point of what makes sense as far as time invested in a photo. So that's that. This is what I do for every exterior, unless it has a sky like this already. If it's just a straight up overcast day and it's just full of clouds, I still do this. This is just something that I do no matter what. That's just a level of consistency that I have adhered to in the last couple of years. This is not something that I charge extra for, so that's up to your own business practices. But this is what I do for an exterior and a sky swap. Hope this helps somebody. Y'all have a great day. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Later.